Before we dive in, I'm thrilled to report that my new book is now available for pre-order. It's called Human in the Room, and it's about the moments where we can build trust, enhance our sense of presence, and use good judgment to stand out amidst the noise so often governed by AI and algorithms. It's a framework that's practical that will help you move past just positioning and posturing to show up as truly human and differentiated in the workplace. The link to pre-orders in the show notes, and I can't wait to go on this journey with you and explore these themes more. Welcome to the Be Student Podcast, and thank you for joining me. On today's episode of the Be Student Podcast, we're mixing things up a little bit. We'll be talking about my new book and system called Human in the Room, and I'm the one getting interviewed. So please join us. We have a fun episode today, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently today. Earlier this week, I announced to the Central Florida community that I'll be leaving my post as CEO of the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce in order to pursue the work around the content and thought leadership I've created in my new book called Human in the Room. I'll also be supporting some new initiatives through the Chamber's Foundation, and I'm really excited to share more about that in the future. But today we're going to be introducing Human in the Room to you, and we are so excited. We're in pre-launch for this book, and there is a lot of interest already, I'm thrilled to say. We had our first pre-launch event last week, and there have been a number of pre-orders and interest in what's happening. I've already been booked to speak on this topic in a couple of different places, and we know this is cutting through and resonating. One of the most exciting features of this new model I'm announcing is that a familiar face to this podcast is my former Chief Marketing Officer at the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce, Addison Cursey. She's joining me today, and I'm also thrilled to say that she is joining my new company, Evermore Advisory, and she's the vice president of that company and is going to be bringing her passion and expertise to helping us deliver thought-leading content across the world in lots of new ways. So welcome, Addie.
Thank you, Betsy.
I'm glad you're here today. And we are, as I said, doing things a little differently today. You're going to be interviewing me. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to you. This podcast is all you now. She's our resident Gen Z millennial expert. And one of the things we're passionate about is intergenerational fluency. That's one of the things we're going to be tackling in the work that we're doing. But I'm going to hand it over to you. And this is now your podcast today.
Well, thank you, Betsy. I am so excited to be sitting here officially in this new capacity with you, and working with you to develop Human in the Room has been so energizing. It's been so exciting that the content in it is something that I've become personally very passionate about, and that we are now able to take it to a much larger scale and develop it not only as a book, but in so many different models so that people are able to connect with it where they already are. And I think the pillars of this system that we're going to get into in a little bit are really going to be transformational for how young people show up, but also how people of any age can show up in their career. And I think when everyone in the workforce is showing up as a better version of themselves, it's going to lead to such a more incredible and dynamic workplace where people are more satisfied, they're more engaged, and they're able to find that fulfillment of being human together in their workplace. So before we jump into the book, I want to talk a little bit about the company that we've started. And it does tie into the book because the foundation of our relationship is trust. And we have been building trust since I joined your team at the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce. And I want to first ask you of what made you trust me that we're going to start a company together. And I'm going to share back too of what made me trust you, because it has to go back and forth. Trust is not a one-way street.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you first of what made you trust me to start something new together?
Well, I want to go back a couple paces, and I want to talk about so much of what's in this book is a tribute to the person that gave me a lifelong masterclass in trust building, and that was my mother. And my mother held the public trust. As a constitutional officer, she was the clerk of Orange County's courts, and prior to that, she was the chairwoman of the Orange County School Board. And she explained to me that holding the public trust was a sacred thing, and that people voted for you to, enact the law, uphold the law, be the custodian of public funds. And so, there were a number of things that she took very seriously. And she wouldn't take Orlando Magic tickets for free because that was a trust violator. And, I'd say, Mom, why are you making a big deal about that? Why don't you just take the Magic tickets? She said, because trust is something you're always needing to build up. And it's something that can be gone in a minute, right? And so I grew up thinking about that. And building trust is very, very important to me. And creating an environment where the people that I'm working with not only feel trusted, but trust me is enabled innovation that goes way beyond what a company of our size at the Winter Park Chamber has typically been able to do. Our superpower is the way we trust each other. Now, you come from a generational cohort that people my age don't want to trust. Let's be frank about that, right? I come from a generational cohort that people your age don't want to trust. And I think that's a dangerous operating system to execute on its surface. I think it's prejudicial, and I think that there are things that people are leaving on the table in terms of opportunity by pursuing that relationship as devoid of value because I'm from Gen X, or devoid of value because you're from Gen Z. And so, one of the things that I knew is that I had to start first with trusting your competency. And unfortunately, one of the biases I brought to you is one of the biases a lot of people my age bring to people your age, which is, it's a phone and a computer, sort it out. And the frustration that I've been able to learn from you about, look, just because I'm in my 20s doesn't mean that I'm an expert at data science or computer software or coding. It just doesn't automatically confer. So you did bring a range of competency to this. And we know that the 3 C's of trust, which I cover in the book, are consistency, care, and competency. So you led with competency, and you showed me that you were capable of doing what we hired you to do, and you were consistently capable of doing that. Now, where you broke out of the pack very early on was in the judgment that you exercised. And that's really where a lot of young people are taking a hit right now. There's so much data, but there's very little discernment that goes with the data. And when you broke away from the pack early on, it was because you made judgment calls that were really well thought through, that showed me that you cared about the whole enterprise. That meant commercial success, brand strength, reputational strength, all of that. And so it was showing up with good judgment, which is actually the thing we're hearing from employers that we're not seeing enough of from a younger cohort, and making them skittish about hiring from that cohort. So that was step one. But actually your ability to strategize and lead are 2 other things that showed me that you were loyal to not just what we did, but the way we did it. I also know that you took pains to dress in a way that your generation doesn't like to dress. And you were signaling to me, look, even if I want to wear this or not, I'm doing this because you're into it, right? And you sent me little consistent signals in a package of trust building exercises that just basically melted away any resistance I would have to who you are and your age. I knew I needed the nimbleness of thought and the expertise. Obviously, you came with a theater background and an MBA, and that's a pretty lethal combo. So I knew I needed that, but I also needed it animated by good judgment and these little cues that you delivered consistently that you were worth trusting.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it feels really good to hear that, because some of those things I was doing intentionally, and some are just the way that I think I am. And what I love about the system is that it helps you understand that. So you're not just accidentally doing it, because in the way that I was accidentally doing good things, I could have accidentally been doing detrimental things.
But shout out to your mom, because she raised you right. She taught you how to do all of this. Yeah.
Yes. And my trust back to you was from watching you, how much you poured into your staff, how much you poured into your team, that for you, you really lead with care and trust. And when we're talking about that, the framework of trust, that care is really where you lead. And I knew that you had my back, because from the beginning of when I joined the chamber team, I was 23, and you were pouring into me as a mentor. And you were very clear that you said, I want you to be here. You have a lot of talent. I want you to grow, but you can't stay here forever because
not allowed.
No, it's not allowed. So from the beginning, you're like, I don't want you leaving yet, but you eventually have to spread your wings and grow your career beyond the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce. And I took that to heart. And one guidepost that you gave me was don't jump anywhere for 10K.
10K more.
10K
right?
more in salary. And as a young person, at first I thought 10K could make a big difference in my life. It might be a worthwhile jump. I'm facing housing pressures. I'm facing student loans and all of the other bills that come around being an independent adult.
Mm-hmm.
So at first I thought 10K could make a big difference in my life. It could add a lot of cushion. But it wasn't playing the long game, which is one of your other long ironclad rules of business, is playing the long game meant that there's a lot of disruption that comes when you change jobs, might not be worth 10K. I was also building a stronger resume that had more responsibilities, that signaled loyalty, and it made it whenever I was approached with opportunities or I pursued them, and you were always extremely supportive of me pursuing other opportunities, that
I didn't like the idea of it, but I play the long game with my employees, right? So if you're on my team, that means we're here to promote you and develop you, whether it's here or somewhere else. And I'll always feel like that about my team members. Yeah.
And that's also where I was able to build a lot of trust with you. This person is really looking out for what's best for me, not what's best for them. It would have been best if you keep me in my little zone at the chamber and you keep churning that and getting what you need.
And you're gone in 18 months and I lose access to your brain forever. So that's not a good business decision.
No, it's not. But you signaled to me that I'm invested in you and where your career is going. And as I had other opportunities potentially presented from me, that I said no to them because I had that guidepost of that's not worth 10K in the long term of my career. That now I'm set up in a place of after 4 years at the chamber, I had an extensive resume, I had extensive credibility and signals of loyalty and investment, that the opportunities in front of me had a much larger salary jump rather than just 10K, and that paid off in dividends and also in the content that I was able to create.
And the people you got to know. You know a bunch of Central Florida's CEOs now who depend on you, who literally would say to me, is Addie coming to this meeting? I was like, yes, you can have your toy, Addie. We'll make sure she's there for you.
Yes. And it was great. And now I'm in this amazing position where I was at a place where I knew I needed to advance my career, but I was sad that I wasn't going to get to work with you. And then we were able to find a lane where I get the best of both worlds, that I'm able to increase my compensation, increase the content, and be excited by new things that I'm working on. And I still get to work with you.
Yay! I get to work with you. I'm so excited.
So that is really what I always come back to, is the foundation of trust. Of nothing that we're doing right now would be possible without the trust that we have intentionally invested in each other, going both ways, up and down, to be able to do something new together.
Well, I'm grateful for that opportunity. Now, I want to shout out Lisa Bainbridge, who was your direct mentor when you started working with me. And in fairness, Lisa supported my mother, and she kind of sat you down and said, let me give you the field guide to one of these people. And so she taught you how to manage up. And I think I'm shocked when I say to people of all ages, hey, do you know what managing up is? And they'll say, no. And, I was taught to manage up early on in my career. And that means taking your boss where they need to go, whether they need to go there or not, anticipating that boss's need so that they see enormous value in you, so that they see strategic value in the way you think about the business. What you want is to be that person your boss can't imagine doing their job without. Now, we hear so much anxiety about how AI is going to take your job. AI is never going to take your job if you've become indispensable to your boss. And so we talk about that in the book, but that's one of the things you developed a masterclass in. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think when I say managing up, people think, oh, that means sucking up to your boss and saying, hey, I really like that sweater on you today. That's not managing up at all. That's hollow performative flattery, right? Managing up is you coming to me and saying, I've seen this gap in our delivery and I think we can close it this way, but I need you to allocate extra funds that aren't budgeted in order to make that happen. And you did that stuff consistently. You said, there's this iceberg ahead and here's this problem and we could solve it together. And then you just elevated elevated yourself consistently to be a senior leader in our organization, ironically, despite your age. And so I felt like you did that masterfully. So I'm now training the question back on you because I actually really want to know.
Yeah, well, because that is the perception, is that managing up is sucking up. The way that I managed up to you is telling you negative things that you might not want to hear.
Like I don't get to make that post.
Yes, but
a lot. That happened a lot.
But those are moments that you could trust me that I wasn't going to let something sneak up on us, that I was going to tell you from the start when there was an issue so that we could solve it together. But it also came to smaller ones of the way that I originally had consistent contact with you at the chamber was that I was filming weekly videos for you. And I would stand in there, set up the shot, and I'd say, your hair doesn't look right in this shot. Or let's actually switch the top that you're wearing, which is a nervous thing to say to your boss, to say your hair doesn't look good. But what I knew is that I was saving us mountains of time, because if I just went ahead and took that shot, took it back to my desk to edit, and then I send you the draft, you were going to look at it and say, I hate the way my hair looks in this. Well, now we have to reschedule another shoot. We have to reshoot it, re-edit it. That was going to add so many more steps to your calendar, not even just mine, to yours, that was worthwhile of saying that was me managing up in a very small way. And as my responsibilities grew, it became ones where I said, hey, I don't know if we're going to be able to make this goal. What other budget do we need to make this happen? That I told you 3 weeks ahead of us potentially missing that goal. So we had 3 weeks to solve it, rather than telling you a day before we missed the goal and we're having to panic and then we both look poor in the results that we're delivering.
And we never miss those targets. Well, I think that's just spoiler alert. We have a whole chapter in the book on managing up. So I can't wait to explore that theme more. I think there's so much need for it, certainly in a cohort of young people. But one of the things we've learned in the pre-launch of this book, the book was really written kind of as a tribute to my kids and what I worry about them not reading in this marketplace, because so much of the cues that would have naturally been given to them are gone, right? The hierarchical way we used to do business, or the rule book, the playbook that used to exist, where there were ironclad rules that were expressed as norms in business, those are gone. And now there are these weird guidances that are being given to people on TikTok, like you can wear pajamas to work and show up as yourself at work. And well, maybe, right? But also maybe not. What if you have a boss like me who's not going to be into that at all, right? And then that trust is lost over one miscue, right? Maybe it's you read the room wrong and wore the wrong thing. That's happened more times I can even tell. And so I think when I thought about this book, I'm like, what do people, my young adult kids' ages, need as they're navigating this world that not only started getting disrupted when data became king and the humanity of business got carved out completely, but also what accelerated during the pandemic that really hollowed out the entire human experience of working. And so, when I think about the person I wrote this book for, it's my kids and it's you. And I had to put this through the Addy filter to make sure that it was relevant and to make sure that it met a need, right? So you've been instrumental in making sure that we've hit some of those targets. I appreciate it.
Well, so I want to jump into what is the book? What is the system? Because we've been talking loosely around it. But so I want to dive into what the 3 pillars actually are and how they work together to build your credibility as a professional in the modern workplace.
Yeah, so we know now that we have to show up as verifiable people. It's not enough to just say, hey, I'm Betsy and I'm a CEO. You actually have to come up with the receipts for things now. And we know, all of us have looked at something that's AI enabled and gotten the ick from it, right? Like, like a video or some kind of weird art generated form that's AI, or even copy on LinkedIn now. I can smell it from a mile away when ChatGPT wrote LinkedIn copy. And it leaves us in a place that makes us uncomfortable. And I think that's because it's violating the process that's millions of years old. We were trained to scan for small signals of danger. And we were trained as animals really to look for danger in our environment and look for especially nonverbal cues that something's not right. And there's something about AI that violates that entire premise. And we know it because we can feel that ick in our stomach or on the hair on our arms or something. We know it already. Now, AI is amazing, and I love it and use it every single day. And it really is an amazing consultative thought partner to me, and it helps me get from A to B a lot faster. But what we need is to be able to confer onto other people. Here's the reason why you want to do business with me. Here's the reason why I want you to like my idea. Here's the reason why I want you to fund my idea. Here's why I want you to follow me, right? So this idea of this kind of influence culture is not going anywhere. And so long before anybody was an Instagram influencer, there were elected leaders that were asking you to send money to their campaign and literally vote for them. And that whole process is a trust accumulation process. And so, like I said, I grew up watching this happen for my mother. I watched the mechanics of it. And then I set out early in my career, which was a sales-based career, to go way beyond, doctor, have I given you enough reasons to prescribe this medication? I just thought that was awful. I don't want to be sold to like that. And so early on in my career, I thought, we have got to start with their problem. What's their problem? And then we've got to work back from their problem and show them how our solution not only matches their problem, but delivers way beyond what they even know they need in a way that does it elegantly and affordably and without any downside for them. And so I started that process of trust as currency, leading with trust as currency to build my business relationships. And when I exited my sales career to stay home full time with my children, my clients sent me baby bumper sets for my child's crib. They sent me baby gifts. They sent me baby cards. And I was overwhelmed by that. I couldn't believe that they saw me as their friend. But they did. And I had worked hard to do that. Now, people who see you as their friend will give you business without even thinking about it. I make referrals all day long to people that I see as my friends. I don't think twice about it. And so we hear from young people that they want to move out of the transactional phase of doing business. They feel like they're sick of this performative, transactional approach to stuff, but they don't know how. And I would say, starting with how you build and strengthen trust, or maybe you have to repair it. Maybe you did something that violated trust and you have to repair it. And that's really important. So leading first in the system with an awareness that everyone's kind of out there measuring trust. We're measuring Instagram follows and likes, but we're not measuring how much trust we have with another person or a stakeholding system. So that's the foundation of everything, being aware of trust and then moving into, the first piece, which is the three components of trust: care, competency, and consistency, as I talked about. The next piece is judgment. Judgment is the thing that animates the trust that you've built up. So when someone's trusted you, they're going to give you that go, no go moment where you get to make the decision, right? And so AI is going to generate all the fact patterns for you, and then someone's got to do something decision time with that information. So that's the go, no go moment where you prove that you're so much more than the machine. And, this is something we know I thought this was something that just young people struggled with because they didn't have the proof of concept and the length of their career. But in working with big corporates, we're realizing that their senior leaders are struggling with this too. And that makes them very nervous. So they're showing up with the technical chops to execute on accounting or finance or, coding or any of the IT needs they have or technical needs around medicine, but they're showing up with bad judgment. And that's the moment where it can all disappear. And so they know that risk is out there, and they actually don't have training budget dollars assigned to helping people improve their judgment skills. So in this book and this system, I put forward the components of good judgment. And that's really situational awareness, self-awareness, and then courage and values alignment, right? So when you read the room, you can pick up on those little cues that came from evolution. There's something wrong in this room. Someone's overly confident, underly confident. They're whispering to their neighbor about something. There's stuff we can pick up if we're aware that there's a room we need to read. And then we've got to be self-aware. We've got to think about, how am I showing up? I'm a very high energy, high intensity person. When I walk into a room, I stop and I take 3 breaths before I walk into a room I'm leading, because I don't want to overwhelm that room with a fire hose of energy, right? It's too much for some people, and it's read as threatening and intimidating. And of course, I don't want to come across like that, because that makes people not trust me. And so I do specific things to be self-aware, to read the room, and then make adjustments within me. And then finally, when it's go time, you've got to look at the alignment of your organization's values or your values, and then you actually have to use courage. Leadership requires courage. And the only thing that will emerge from the AI disruption is leadership and discernment. And so I give a practical system in here that I call the juice test, where you can evaluate whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze. Yeah, there's all kinds of things we can do, but is it worth it? The collateral damage to our reputation or our organization's reputation may not be worth what we're going to get on the other side of that orange squeeze. And then finally, the piece of the system is about presence. And it's not just about what you wear. It's about the energy that you show up with. It's about making sure that you're showing up with the energy you want to show up with, right? So I changed how I dressed today because I wanted people to see we're doing things differently. And you and I look more aligned in how we're dressing. Normally I wear a blazer on here and it looks like hard charging chamber CEO. Today I wanted to signal something in a nonverbal way that's different. And that was an intentional choice I made about my presence. And I want particularly young people to be using their clothes as weapons. If you need to be taken seriously, put on a blazer. I know you don't want to wear it. I don't want to wear it, right? But the reality is, our clothing is the packaging that's sending off nonverbal cues, and 90% of communication is nonverbal. So that presence is the last piece. And then all of it is this discrete system that works like a flywheel. If you start with an awareness of trust building, and then you animate that with good judgment, and you package it in a thoughtful, curated presence, you're going to level up. And we know that the skills that we are curating for in the C-suite are all soft skills. And that's what's under the heading of this system. And we know that people that work soft skills earlier in their career, over time, make more money. So that's a good reason right there to practice it.
I love that we now have this system of presence, judgment, and trust, because I feel like the masterclass that I've been watching, learning under you for years, is now digestible, and that we can also get it to so many more people. I can genuinely tell you that over happy hours with my friends, whenever they're asking me about their career or a situation that's happening in their work, I go, let me tell you about this thing Betsy taught me.
I'll bet they're so sick of hearing about that old lady.
And now I'm going to be able to say, here's a book about it. So I'm going to become really fun at parties. But with that sense of that, I've been able to learn so many of these things from you, over the 4 years of working with you. And now it's in a digestible system that people can pick up and say, okay, I really want to work on trust. I really want to work on judgment. I really want to work on presence, and then see how those compound. Now, here's another thing that I've observed, and I can verify this because I have been with you when this happens. About every week, somebody says, Betsy, you should write a book. And I can verify that happens because it happens in front of me often. And there's many things that I think you could write a book on. And there's been many moments where you could have chosen to write a book. So why is now so critical that you made this choice? What kept you up at night and said, I finally need to put these specific ideas into a book?
Well, my career has been oddly specific. And it's really been, as many of our listeners know, it's taken place in London and the United States and multiple places, huge industries, small organizations, grassroots politics, etc. But over the past 9 years, I've worked with hundreds of businesses, and there's a feeling that something's not right. And it's coming through in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conversations. It's coming through in the students that I provide mentorship for that are either at the MBA level or the undergraduate business level. It's coming through in their employers and in HR professionals saying, you just can't believe what we're dealing with. And when they explain it to me, I truly can't believe it. And I realize there's this urgent credibility crisis. We know it's happening. People don't trust the media anymore. They don't trust the government anymore. They don't trust organized religion anymore. These are the big institutions that people always trusted. And so this crisis of trust is swirling out there. We also have a crisis of loneliness and belonging. We have anxiety showing up disproportionately in your generational cohort. And we have employers that are saying, I don't even know what to do with this. Right? So in working with hundreds of businesses through the past 9 years at the Chamber of Commerce, I've heard it come through, but no one can actually name the problem. They can't say, here's what it is, and then put a training budget attached to it. About 10% of training budgets right now are going to soft skills training. And the World Economic Forum has told us soft skills are the new power skills. And by 2030, the only skills you're going to need to have is soft skills. How do you train soft skills? What is that? Being nicer at work? I don't think it is. I think you have to have a prescriptive, repeatable format where you know what you're supposed to be doing. Because I don't think what young people need is one more coaching tip that they just don't have, right? I think they need assessments. And in the book, there are quizzes. So you can anchor into how well am I doing this part? How well am I doing that part? Where can I improve? What's the pillar of this framework that I can make better? And so it's very practical and it's really prescriptive because these are the gaps I've seen working with hundreds of businesses, both in Europe and America. And the errors in judgment I've watched happen over and over and over again in just a sense of gobsmacked wonder. And so now I'm thinking this is the urgent intersection of crisis of credibility, the ick over AI, and employers and employees just missing each other. There's no connectivity there. And then, of course, like I said, I'm the parent of 2 young adults, and I wanted to write something that would be useful to them and the people that they know. But we've heard that there are mid-career people who are doing these things, I don't want to say wrong, but not to the effective way that would animate the business and their own career trajectory. So it's an exciting time. Disruption is a great opportunity to rebuild something. And I think as a culture, we do need to build trust. We need to repair it. We need to be thinking about how to improve trust connection all through our stakeholding networks. And so I think this is the why now answer.
Love that. And it's so true of when you're saying that. I love that this is for young people. I felt that it resonated with me in all of the rounds of edits that we've done with this book of where it can apply to me and how I can share this knowledge with my peers. But so much of it comes to that it's not just the young people in the workforce. It's the mid-level leaders and it's the senior leaders who are not modeling this, who are not taking the time to teach the young people what they used to know, but might not be practicing in their day-to-day anymore, of that is a trust gap there that needs to be resolved, is knowing that everyone is following the same system, that they are all operating in ways that are building positive momentum is really key to us all moving forward, is that it needs to start also from the top down so that the leaders that you're learning from are signaling these same things to you.
Yep, absolutely. We've seen the CEO of Uber make judgment calls that cost the whole company, stock value. We've seen the CEO of Tesla do that. We've seen countless people who have got the tech chops to just kill it, but then they've gone and done that one thing that broke it all down. And so it isn't just a young person's affliction. It's across the board, and especially stemming from the fact that these old hierarchies and playbooks have just disappeared.
Well, I want to dive into what I found is the most reassuring part of this system is that it allows for you to fail. You don't have to be perfect, because you just talked about some big failures that we're seeing in the S&P 500 of when those mistakes were made, it impacted people's 401ks. Those are really big mistakes. But there's also ones that are happening every day that are small little ones that you might miss an email, you might be late to a meeting, for all of these different reasons. So I want you to dive into what is the grace that is built for practitioners of this system when they're really using it effectively.
So here's what I've learned in life, and I love being the age I am. I don't like all the physical things that come with it, but I love being the age I am. And the reason why is that I've seen this movie and I know how it ends, right? So things don't go according to plan. I'm a perfectionist. I want to just outwork everything. And the reality is in life, there's things you can't outwork. There's problems that are going to come at you whether you're the best at what you do or not. And the reality is if you've built up a storehouse of trust, you can rely on those moments when, and I'll give you an example. We had a food festival several years ago that one of our most trusted partners brought a whole branded display booth to. And through no fault of our own, that booth caught on fire due to a cooking accident at this event. And that person's hundreds of dollars that he had put into this booth burned up. And before he could walk away and say, well, that was a bust for me because I lost $600 worth of display stuff and maybe I got a little bit of new business, but now I'm down this. I called him and I said, you're so important to us. And even though this fire wasn't our fault, it happened on our watch and it happened at our event. And I just want you to know that I'm going to be waiving your membership fee for the next year out of respect for the loss that you sustained tonight. And we're really sorry that it happened on our watch. That member today has got now like 5 memberships with me, is on the board, couldn't be a more generous investor to what we do. That cost me nothing to do that. And all that was about strengthening that bond that was already strong because we had built up a lot of trust together. A fire is going to happen. Something's going to happen in your business and in your life that is out of your control. And if you've built up enough trust bonding with your stakeholders, you can make that call and say, I understand this didn't go the way we all wanted it to. And I'm here showing up to say, I need you to give me one more shot, right? And so I think that's very powerful currency. And it enables you to stumble and rebuild the trust. I think of trust as a keg of dry powder. And you should be keeping it as dry as you possibly can and not discharging it on silly things that aren't juice worth the squeeze, right? And so if you keep your powder dry, then you've always got a big barrel of it to spend on the big things. And so that would be my advice on that.
It's really about the practice. It's not about perfecting it, but continuing to practice it. And where you and I are at, and we have a very close business relationship, we also have a really strong personal relationship, that because we've worked that system with each other intentionally or unintentionally, that we have the level of trust that when one of us makes a mistake, it comes down to the fact that we're human.
Oh, I've had to apologize to you. I've had to say, I'm sorry, I snapped at you. I was blah, 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 I was unacceptable. I need to apologize to you about it. And I hope that I have enough trust with you to get through that stuff.
But the best part is that is an opportunity to build even more trust, because whenever you see how somebody handles how they do something wrong, that tells you so much more about the person, and knowing, hey, if something goes wrong, I can trust them to fix it. And you have just reinvested in an extremely compound way back into your human in the room system.
Yep. I don't always get it right. And I think when I think about writing this book was humbling, because I thought, God, here I am telling y'all how to do this. And I'm not a perfect practitioner of any of it myself. What I will say is when I think about the 3 components of trust, care, competency, and consistency, I'm pretty good at the competency piece, and I think care is probably my strongest piece of that. Where I struggle is on consistency. And it was interesting. I gave a couple of advanced reader copies to friends of mine, one of whom is a CEO. And I said, will you please read this brutally and honestly? And she's one of the most unforgiving editors I've ever met. And I knew that she would take a red pen to that thing and it was going to look like a murder site. And she texted me over the weekend after she started the manuscript. And I knew that we had something when she texted me, and she's got 400 employees and 16 offices around the world. And she said, I just stopped reading this book as an editor and I started reading it as a consumer. I need this as a CEO, and my team need this. When can I book you to come in and do this as a workshop? And I thought, oh God, I can't believe that. I'm so happy about that. So I'm not a perfect practitioner of it. I know CEOs aren't perfect practitioners of it, but if CEOs picked it up, they could supersize their trust building and be even more effective with it. So I do think it's a system we should all be working perpetually because, like I said, it's a flywheel that just keeps spinning and strengthening as you go. But it was a great opportunity for me to self-reflect and think, yeah, I could do a little bit better on some of these things myself.
I love your vulnerability in sharing that, because when I was the first time that I proofread a full copy of the manuscript, there were ones too where I went, oh, I better make a note of that because Betsy's looking out for that. Let me make sure that I'm firming that up there. And we already have a really strong relationship.
Yeah, consistency is the one she could do better on, right?
Yes, but it is in the sense of it's not all or nothing. It's that you can start building this in small little ways. And that awareness allows you to know, here's where I can improve. And it doesn't feel so big. It doesn't feel so scary. And we've kept this still, you shared an amazing amount of details, but we've still kept this really high level. There is so much more material that's in the book, that's in the Human in the Room system that anchors in on presence, judgment, and trust. So Betsy, will you tell us where we can find out more about this?
Yes, you can go to humanintheroombook.com. You can pre-order it at betsygardner.com. And we are so excited to be rolling this out. I'll be speaking and traveling and training people on this system. And I'm really excited to bring you all on this journey with me. So hit me up on LinkedIn or find me at betsygardner.com or humanintheroombook.com.
Great. And Betsy, how much longer are you going to be with the Winter Park Chamber?
So my last day will be May 1st, and I will always be rooting for and connected to the Winter Park Chamber. I'll be advising the Chamber's foundation on some new initiatives that we've got planned there. So I'll stay attached, but only to the foundation side. And I know the board is going to be finding a great new leader for the Chamber.
I know. I'm excited for the next chapter for all of us of what that means. I am going to officially hand the podcast back to you because you still have 2 months of episodes of the Be Student podcast of bringing the audience the incredible content that they love and they've latched onto that has fed so much of the Human in the Room system of what we've heard from the leaders on this show. So I'm going to officially hand hosting duties back over to you.
You did a great job hosting. Thanks so much for being with us today. We do have a lineup of incredible guests coming up, so stay with us. I know season 2 is off to a great start. I think we have a couple 100,000 views already of what we've done. So I know that it's resonating, and we have some really interesting special series headed your way. So please keep sharing, subscribing, liking, commenting. We're thrilled that you joined us today for the Be Student podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Before you go, one quick reminder, my new book, Human in the Room, is now available for pre-order. There's a link in the show notes. If what we talked about here today resonated with you, the book will take you on an even deeper dive. Thanks so much for being with us today. Appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time.